Ciao.
Be fine. Everything's fine.
But the monsters.
It's fine. It's fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Well, it's fine.
Or two for me, sir.
A word or two for you, I can say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Feels like we're at the beginning of a Dr. Seuss book, or maybe like the middle
right
of a Dr. Seuss book. Adam Christianson is here with us, everybody. Adam Christianson. He, of course, the host of the MacCast, online at MacCast.com, and you can find him on Twitter at MacCast. Really couldn't be much more simple than that.
Pretty easy.
So I said what I wanted to do was, if we had anything negative we wanted to say, let's go ahead and start with the negative, and then we'll end with the positive, because lately, as the conversations have gone on, I have felt like I'm getting more negative. And so I said that to you, and you said, I don't know if I can lift you up, man. And I started to ask you questions, and I realized, no, let's catch it for the show. Overall, were you pleased or disappointed with the WWDC keynote?
Nah, I was fine with it. I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. Like, I'm not really upset about anything. I don't know that I'm really excited about anything in particular. And there's a lot of little niceties in there, but it feels like a lot of refinement, and that's not necessarily bad. So I don't want to get like down on it. So maybe that's where the positivity is, right? Like, I think there's a lot of cool little things, but I don't think I walked away going, wow. If that makes sense.
Well, no, it does make sense. What I actually, so I got to speak at a Mac user group earlier this week, doing a virtual meeting thing. And what I actually likened it to was, this is sort of like an S-cycle keynote. So the iPhone 4, bam, the iPhone 4S, oh, here's a little bit more, tweaked. iPhone 5, bam, iPhone 5S, hey, here's that again, but, refined. So that's kind of your feeling on the keynote.
That's exactly my feeling. Yeah, in a lot of ways, there's like a lot of nice little things. I just don't know that like anything is going to. It's all going to make my life better. I was almost going to say it. I don't know if there's anything that's going to make my life better at the end of the day. They're all nice little refinements, and I'm going to enjoy a lot of them. Are they going to be like the thing that I'm like, I have to upgrade because of that, or I need that, or like a great example, like one of the biggest examples was I found myself when they were going through iPad OS, and talking about, oh, hey, we're going to bring the app library and we're going to bring widgets and we're going to be like, I'm like, why wasn't all that stuff there before? Like that was my reaction. I literally said to my kids, I'm like, oh, good. They're finally getting around to that, like that should have been there when they brought it to the iPhone. Like, okay, great. Or the refinements they're bringing to Mac OS, to make it more like the other things. So yeah, there's like a lot of nice little things. Probably the thing I'm most excited about, oddly enough, because I've been talking about it for years, and even my audience even emailed me about it, and they're like, hey, you must have predicted this thing. And it was the legacy thing, the iCloud legacy thing.
Oh,
We've been talking about this for years, probably. I think it started back with Mac Roundtable, especially after we lost Tim for Borton, right?
Yeah.
The whole conversation came up about like, how do you manage your digital legacy? In the age of digital, how do we deal with this digital legacy? And we've been talking about it since then. So like, that's a big deal to me, right? To be able to kind of have this digital will and say, hey, this person is allowed to get access to my stuff should I pass. And that sounds a little bit morbid, but it's also a very positive thing, right? Because they're finally recognizing like this is the age we live in. Our lives live in the cloud on our computers, and we need to be able to pass that stuff on, those memories and those photos and our accounts and our emails and all of that stuff is value, potentially to our loved ones when we shuffle off. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. That I was very excited about.
I have a friend who's his father had a habit of going off on vacation by himself, and his father died while he was on vacation. And nothing untoward, nothing terrible. So I'm not being cagey because, he was found in a closet with 3 other people. I mean, it's nothing terrible like that. But the situation in which he was found was odd. And then it was made worse by the fact, elements and things like that, because he had been outside when he was found, and it was a week or 2 before he was actually found. And then, of course, there was nothing. Nobody knew passwords. Nobody knew anything. There was actually damage to the phone. And my friend is somebody who, you would turn to if you were in this kind of situation. And it was 4 months of his life that he was eventually just had to go ahead and let it go. He was never able to get into the phone and get into that stuff. So that's one that I've honestly kind of been overlooking, but that could be because, I'm afraid to die.
It's not a fun topic. It's not a fun topic, right? It's not a fun subject to talk about, but it's an important one.
Yeah.
And so, I was happy to see them finally acknowledge and do something about that, because I've had horrible stories. I've covered them on my show.
Yeah.
For people who couldn't get access to that stuff, and we've talked about using a tool like 1Password and making sure your loved ones have access to that and all that sort of thing, or using, we use Family now because of that, that they could solve some of those problems. So them addressing that, I thought was great.
All right.
I really did.
Are you a shortcuts user? Because Allison Sheridan asked me on yesterday's show, am I excited about shortcuts coming to the Mac? And both Allison and I had to confess that we've never really gotten the shortcuts thing. And I've tried to a few times, and I've got 2 shortcuts that I use, but they are both shortcuts that I built. Basically, one is useful. The other one was just I can do that way, and so I'll go ahead and do that way, and there. Now I've made a shortcut, or now I've made 2. Are you a shortcuts guy, and are you excited at all about it making the move?
I'm excited about it making the move. Absolutely. I think it's an incredible tool. Am I a shortcuts user? Not really. Beyond, I will often build them for my community. So people will email me and say, can I do A, B, and C? Or I can't figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. And a few times I've been like, I bet you I could do that with a shortcut.
Okay.
And I solved those with people, and I've shared them with people. I don't use them for myself. I often build them for other people, though.
What is the shortcut that you've made with the highest number of steps?
That's a great question. Probably only 12 or 15. I've never built anything really complex.
All right, because there was a story that came out recently that was with the iOS 14.5 update, shortcuts are taking much less time.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a big deal.
Well, I mean, that's cool. But what I'm saying is they talked about some that were like if you have one that's 350 steps, it's noticeably shorter. If you have one that's 700 steps, well, it's still going to take you a while. And I'm like, what are you doing that's taking 700 steps? Having built a few for a few different people, I thought
I can kind of answer that question. Yeah,
please do.
The problem, it's not necessarily the problem, it's just the way. So if you're programming, right, there's different levels of abstraction.
Okay.
Right. So you start with if you were writing machine code, right? If you're writing in binary or something very, very low level, writing to the metal, or whatever you want to call it, right? That's going to be highly fast and efficient. And then the more you abstract, so the more you move into a language where you don't have to be talking the language of the computer, you abstract that language, it gets more verbose, we call it. Basically you have to use more language to accomplish the same thing.
Right.
And so the thing about shortcuts is the way they kind of work, in my opinion, is they're extremely verbose. So to do a very simple task takes multiple steps in a lot of cases. So you have to kind of thread together all these elements. And if you use shortcuts, you kind of know. The best description I've ever had anybody give is it's sort of like, building a recipe. And you kind of lay out all the ingredients, and then you have all the instructions, and then they all go together to make a thing. Okay. And so, yeah, it's just very verbose. It takes a lot of steps to do relatively simple things, but that also brings the power of it because it abstracts it in a way that most people can build things with it. Right. So that's the power of abstraction, is you make it into something very simple. Whereas like if I had to teach you
Fortran,
Fortran, or even something higher level like PHP or JavaScript or something like that, right? That's
right.
going to be easier, and shortcuts are even easier than that, right? You don't really need to know a programming language. You just have to know sort of what you're trying to make. Like I want to make bread, and shortcut says, well, here's some flour. How much of that do you need? Here's some water. How much of that do you need? Okay, how are you going to combine them together? I combine this, then that, then this, and then I do that, and then you have a cake.
Yeah, it's quite possible that, I know audio production. I know how to edit things. I know how to put together shows, stuff like that. My technology is pretty much, I'm not trying to do anything fancy with it, I guess, unless you count making a show fancy. But that to me is very much a human thing, not a thing that the machine is doing for me. It's just, it could be tape and a razor blade, except it's not, which, I'm grateful for that. I think the thing is for me, and I don't want to sound like I'm bashing shortcuts. I think for me, the thing is I've never been able to grok the kinds of things you can do. And so I don't know to turn to shortcuts for it. It's possible that I'm doing something on my phone every day that, there would be a perfect shortcut for, except it seems unlikely because it's just as easy to push the, the Twitter icon as it is to push the shortcut to get me to Twitter. And that's probably the most confusing thing I'm doing on my phone. All right. So we talked about the depressing.
So here's a great example. Like somebody wrote me and they were having an issue because the health app or something they were in the UK and they had a scale, and the scale did everything in pounds, but then the health app was doing, or in stones rather. They were doing their weight in stones, but then the health app was doing everything in like decimal pounds, and the decimal part of it was getting all thrown off because it was, however many point this stones, and they were entering that thinking that was going in, but it was going in as pounds. And so I wrote them a shortcut to convert basically stones to a decimal number in pounds.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's really cool. So that
would go into the health app. So when they were entering their weight every day, it would go into the health app in the correct format and not the incorrect format. So they were putting it in as stones, like I don't know stones, so I'm going to get the weights off. So say it was 14.5 stones.
Right.
Well, it was reading it as,
14.5 pounds.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it was still doing the stones. I can't remember. It was doing the stones part right, but the decimal part was off. So the whole thing was off, basically. So
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
I guess one other question I have for you, and maybe the theme is refinement, as we talked about. Maybe that's the theme. Were there any themes that you picked up on besides that, or is that it and you're done?
Privacy. I think there was a huge emphasis on privacy, especially when you looked at like some of the cloud stuff they were doing with email and iCloud Plus.
Yeah,
there was definitely a continued focus on privacy and security, about moving, enabling Siri to operate, on your device is a big deal for privacy,
right?
Security, that sorts of things. So I noticed that as a big trend. Yeah, but I don't think that's anything new. Again, like it's just more of the same that Apple's been doing. They're just pushing it further.
Right. All right.
It's all good stuff, like I don't want to sound negative about it, right? But you're right. It's not anything earth shattering. There's nothing that they're doing that like.
Well, wait, don't say you're right. I didn't say that.
I'm right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe you're right. I don't know. I'll tell you honestly, the most exciting thing that I saw, but it's the same kind of thing that you always see. It was something that Michael Stieber said where he was like, boy, is all this stuff pointing to AR. And I'm like, well, I definitely want to believe that. And so when he says that, I can see everything he's talking about, like the continued emphasis on Memoji, the stuff about Reality Kit 2, and the fact that you're going to be able to make like these perfect 3D images of things, just using pictures from your iPhone and, whatever API they have there, whatever tool they have to do that. But I don't really feel like that was a theme. I want it to be a theme. I want that to be a theme as much as Gene Munster wanted the TV to be a theme, except now, of course, he switched to AR and VR. So, now I feel like I'm falling into that trap with him. I mean, I guess it really is just privacy, security, and refinement, which honestly, with as many Apple things as I have just like within sight right now, those are not the worst themes in the world. You do kind of miss, oh, and also here's the car.
Right. What'd you think about the sharing stuff, the share play?
Oh,
I was a little excited by that.
Yeah.
Only when they said all the partners they had, because when they announced it, I here we go. It's going to only work with Apple TV Plus.
Right.
Right. And then they're like HBO Max and obviously the big missing one was Netflix, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus.
Yeah, Twitch, Masterclass. Masterclass honestly was the one that I found most interesting. It's the kind of thing, Allison joked yesterday, she was like, great, we have this now that we're all going back outside. I mean, first of all, we're not all going back outside. I mean, we are here in the States, but there's a whole planet that's, not quite as ahead as we are here in the States and a few other countries. Masterclass was the one that I found most interesting because you and I could take a class together, right? Which is like a really neat idea. Like, if I'm taking a philosophy class with Masterclass, which I actually did one of those a while ago, I can tell you what I learned, but that's not the same as, hey, dude, it's time for our next class. And then you and I can sit there and talk about it and do whatever exercises and stuff. I love that. It wasn't Masterclass that I did that with. It was Great Courses. But anyway, I love the idea, because watching a movie together is fine. Watching a TV show together is fine. Being able to listen to music together is fine. Something that's actually going to, elevate our minds, let us both do that thing, struck me as like, oh, that's interesting. That's, borderline important.
I think the other thing, like Allison saying that though too, is like, how far away are you, I, and Allison? And let's be honest, how often are we getting together even pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if this is another thing, we're just thinking about like, hey, we can watch a movie. I did this with my friends from high school. We did it, again, it was because of the pandemic, but these are people that I hardly ever see anymore. Mm-hmm. And we did it with the new Bill and Ted's movie, and it was a lot of fun. And so, like, it's just kind of a fun thing. And the fact that they could pull the kind of licensing together and get, like, everybody on board, because a lot of the services have their own version of this, but as far as I know, this feels like the first one where it's not dependent upon the service. Like, I think Disney Plus has a sharing thing. I think Netflix has a sharing thing. Yeah. Here it kind of integrates with a bunch of different things in FaceTime, right? In an Apple technology, which is an interesting thing for them to be able to pull off and they did it with music too, right? So it's not just video, it's music, it's TV shows. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how well it gets used, because a lot of times too, like what happens is these things come out and you think they're going to be like big, and then they kind of don't go anywhere. So that could end up being the case. But I still found it interesting.
All right, you see, now you got me thinking along this whole different thing. So I was going to say, all right, so the themes were privacy, security, and refinement. And then, you throw in this thing, and I'm like, oh, yeah, well, you could actually say the theme is sharing as well, because not only is there the share play thing, but what's also the, what do they call it? The FaceTime links or something, where I can now, like, my dad does not have an iPhone. My dad does not have a Mac. My dad and I cannot FaceTime. But I could email him a FaceTime link now, and as long as he's got a smartphone, and he does, with a camera, which it has, he and I could FaceTime with, nothing more than, he clicks this link and we can do that now. Mm-hmm. So, privacy, security, refinement, togetherness, and secretly augmented reality.
Augmented reality.